Well, hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. My name is Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I am pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solutions engineer. Today, Dion has something I think very exciting for you, dealing now with desktop web and dashboards. But we're also here to answer your questions, so go ahead and type your questions into the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll get to them a little bit later on in the session. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter. All right.
There we go.
And I can see your screen, so we're all set.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here. Summer has started, getting a little hot here, and things are really exciting. A lot of stuff going on out there. So, as always, we are here for you, and we would like you to help us in terms of questions you might have. In fact, our presentation today was driven by a question sent into our guides at alphasoftware.com email address beforehand. So, we're going to cover some of that today. Before, a couple quick announcements. First is that DevCon is still open and available, although seats are dwindling fast. People are signing up daily. So take your time to go to the Alpha Software website, and you can sign up there, register, see the venues, see the incredible events that are going on. And what's fascinating is that every day we're going to have more to talk about at that event. So it's pretty intense, pretty exciting there. Also, we had talked briefly. I wanted to give you a real quick update. The transform, one of the key things we've been working on the transform side of it is that we are focused on making it easy to access data within transform into other systems. And you could write your own through our API, but also we've been working and have developed a Zapier integration. It's very, very exciting because it allows you to take the data both two ways in and out of transform and utilize it in many very interesting ways. And one of the most fascinating ways, which Dave, our esteemed colleague here, did was he took a transform form, used Zapier, and was able to use an HTML template to actually turn that into a printed form that matched what a potential client. We were talking to someone, they had a specific form structure on that. So as you can see, the whole transform area is rapidly maturing. I highly recommend if you're interested in learning more, Dave is hosting Transform Tuesdays, and you can contact him to get availability and get signed up for that. And they go over these kind of capabilities, talk about the details, all the new things that are going on with Transform. And over time, we'll be spending more and more time on using Alpha Anywhere and Transform together through the API structure there. But very exciting stuff, very interesting how you can take and build a form very quickly, literally in minutes with this level of sophistication, and then using the Transform Zapier integration, be able to leverage that data into, in this case, a printed form, but it could be any other way, many ways it could be used within that system. And what's cool about Zapier is you can actually chain things together so you can create like workflow processes. So pretty exciting stuff. Great job, Dave. I appreciate you sharing that with everybody. And again, if you're interested in learning more, Transform Tuesdays every Tuesday.
Exactly. Just send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com, and we can get you over the link for joining that.
Excellent, excellent. So today, and I really appreciate the patience of our team last week. We kind of went and did a follow-up on Viewbox, hence the screen here. And at that point, we kind of dove into that, and we ended up kind of spending a lot more time on that. So we weren't able to actually focus on dashboards, responsive dashboards, and how to build them for the desktop web explicitly right here. You'll notice we're showing that it can be displayed both on a desktop web, tablet, phone interface, etc. But we're really going to focus a little bit more about how you can use some key fundamental technologies within Alpha to build these very nice looking dashboards and be able to create very dynamic user interfaces that really leverage the wider screen that's available on a desktop web. So today, we're going to dive into that, and really the essence of that are a certain set of key technologies that enable the building of these, and we're going to cover those. Some of this is going to be a little bit of a recap for some people, so bear with us. But with that, I'm going to go over here, and the key technologies we're going to talk about are panel cards, panel navigators, panel layout, and then the newer control bar and menus. The panel cards have been out for some time, the panel technology, and really is the fundamental basis for our mobile implementations. But they're equally available for desktop web, and there's a lot of really neat things you can do, and we're going to show you some tricks and other techniques today, and very, very powerful there. But a little bit of a recap for people who are kind of new. Um, Panel cards are kind of the essence of it's a content area, and you can have multiple cards in your application. You'll see in a few minutes when we build this, we'll be actually developing some cards and putting them together and things like that. And you can think about it as a deck of cards. Each card has a specific amount of content, and you want to be able to either show multiple cards at a time or show them individually or some element of that, both of that between them. And that's where panel navigators and panel layouts come in. Those are the essentially, I like to call them traffic cops, where they decide in terms of what cards are visible to the user at any one point in time. So let's first look at the panel navigator. The idea of the panel navigator is that a panel navigator will show one and only one panel card at a time to a person. So specifically, you'll see in this particular app, we have 3 different panel cards, and through the panel navigator, it will either through swipe gestures or programmatically, depending on how you want to do it, is going to move content into that visible area. So this is the visible area. These are currently the kid cards concepts there. So what's nice about this is that the panel navigator is ideally suited for mobile solutions where you're going to have a very small screen real estate. You can't show a lot of cards at one time. So you want to be able to show them one at a time and control that aspect. And you can, again, control it through allowing the user to do it, or you can do it what we call programmatically, where you direct how those cards are being showed within there. And again, if you're doing mobile, this is your first stop there. But we also have something called a panel layout. Now, panel layout is a very interesting idea because you're going to have more than one card shown at one time. So in case, let's look on the left-hand side, you'll see we have a panel layout. And in that, we're showing 2 different panel cards, and each panel card has a specific screen real estate that's available there. And you'll see what's really cool is that it's not an if or, you can actually combine these items together. So you can use a combination of panel layouts, panel cards, and we're going to actually demonstrate that today. It's very exciting and very fun, and it will really make incredibly powerful dashboards that you may want to build on your solution from there. So again, you have panel navigators with the concept of a one and only one card. You have panel layouts where you're going to show multiple cards, and you can also mix and match these things together and have multiple available. There's certain rules that are established by the system, and we'll be showing those rules a little bit later. But the system is nice enough to show if you've broken a rule, it's going to actually tell you what you've broken and go from there. Now, we're going to spend the first part kind of talking about laying out our dashboard using these technologies, but also we want to focus on the control bar and the menus capability. So again, the control bar is a relatively new control. Again, it was really developed to help you manage that critical top portion and bottom portion real estate of your mobile app. So it allows you to create these very sophisticated user interfaces for those headers and footers. And what's neat about it too is that it makes a very complex job much easier, and also added some really cool things called disclosures where you can have like slide out panels and other things like that. So it was really this cool meta control that was built. And when you're looking at a desktop, we'll show you how you can include that into your desktop environment to be able to kind of use that same concept to produce what are normal like menu bars at the top of a web dashboard. Then last but not least is that we have the expanding menu concept. This is, again, fairly recent. It's been around for a while, but in the recent, we've sort of enhanced the capabilities of that. And so you're going to see you can add that in there to create these very powerful menu interfaces. And essentially, we can recreate what would be a tabbed UI to a large degree just using these sets of technologies together. So panel navigators, specifically with panel cards, panel layouts, control bars, and menus. So let's go ahead and do a demo and put these things together and have some fun with it. So bear with me. I'm going to jump over into my development environment. Apologize, my voice is a little rough today. So let's go ahead and go in here. So again, for people who are new, we're inside our development environment, and I'm at the Web Projects Control Panel. And so when we're dealing with either a mobile platform or a dashboard, we want to start with a UX control, a form, because that's the essence of our system. So I'm going to go up here and click New, click Web Component, click Next, go to UX. This is the UX here. Notice we have still the tab builder and all these other things, but we're going to use the UX as the basis for our dashboard. Now, we have a whole bunch of pre-built templates that are available, and I highly recommend as you start to learn this, you use some of these. So for instance, if you'd like to learn more about expanding menu tree, how that's structured, you could use this one. Just using control bars, it's this one. There's also some other, fly-in menu to select. So these other things like here, you can kind of open them, create templates, and then dissect them from there. But I'm going to start with a blank one for our work today. So I'm going to click OK. So now we're in the UX builder. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to say desktop web dashboard _UX. So we've got it saved. I'm going to go to controls here. And so I want to start with the panels, and the panel cards are the essence. So before I get into the actual content I'm going to show the user, I kind of want to build my structure. So we're going to start and we're just going to enhance it over time. So let's start out really straightforward. We'll go into the panel section. So over on the left-hand side, I went into the panel section, and you'll notice this is where I can access panel layouts, navigators, and cards. So these are available for me here because they're essentially components that are used by the UX control to present the data to the user. But notice one other thing here, quick panels. If I click on there, we actually have ways you can predefine stuff, so we actually have predefined layouts that you can access. So I'm going to start from scratch, but you can always go in here and say, hey, I want a panel navigator with 3 cards, or I want a panel layout with 2 panel cards and with some sample text. And actually, let me just go ahead and do that. Click OK. And you'll see it automatically generates that layout, and I can go into the working preview. And you'll see I have a panel card over here with some set of text and over here from there. So those quick panels and the predefined layouts allow you to do some cool stuff, including things like, for instance, a split view and other pieces here. So as you're getting started, you can obviously watch this video demonstration, but you can also go in, use one of these, and then from there, go ahead and kind of explore and dissect it from there to see how those were built and put together from there. So go ahead and delete this. So I'm going to start out very simply. I'm going to start out with a panel card. So I'm going to put a panel card on my UX. And you'll notice it's asking me, do you want an opening and closing tag? Yes, I do. So you'll see nothing super exciting yet, but we have this thing called a panel card. And on the panel card, we have an opening tag and a closing. And the idea is between here will be my content. So now if I go into working preview, you're going to see, well, a whole lot of nothing, because panel cards are invisible controls. They're there to format and structure and control what the person sees, but they in and of themselves are not seen. Same thing with panel layouts and panel navigators. They are just sort of these hidden controls that allow you to structure things. So now I can go back in here. I'll go down here and I'm going to add a static text. And I'm just going to go ahead and say test. Now when I watch it, you'll see that we still don't see the panel card, but now we see that content in there. So now we have that content. So any content, so these are there and they're taking up the full space of the working preview. And that's the idea of responsive. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then I have some content went in there. Now, what I'd like to do on this panel card is that I would like to show kind of like a header area and a footer area just on this panel card. So just to explore a little bit more about that, I'm going to go ahead and click on panel card number 1. And I'm going to say panel header. And it's asking me if I want to include a control bar. I'm going to say no for now, but we'll come back to that in a little bit. So you'll notice now we have our panel card, we have our content, but we now have this new little set of tags for my panel header. And now when I go in here, you'll see that now, oh, it doesn't show here. I wonder why it's not showing there. Oh, because I don't have any content in there. So it's nothing to show in that test. So let me go ahead and put a piece of content in here, static text, and I'll just say header. Okay, let's go to working preview. And now you'll see that it's created a nice little header here at the top, and then my content is down below. So this allows me, and I can do the same thing. I can add a panel footer. and I don't want a control bar in there, and I'm going to put some text in there, and I'm going to say footer. So now I have my working preview, and now I have a header area, I have my content area, and the footer area. So panel cards in and of itself can be used just like this to kind of structure your user interface if you're going to have like buttons up top and the other. And what's important is that these are responsive. So if I do a full preview here real quick and open it up in my browser, you'll see that if I expand and close it, it's basically kind of laying it out nicely, you know. So these are responsive, which means that they will, Alpha takes care of making sure that it looks good on the screen no matter what the screen size is, and we'll take care of handling that. And you have more control over that. But the nice thing is, you notice how when I pull it up here, the footer comes up here so it doesn't disappear. We handle all that, and that's called responsive design capability. Okay, so a single panel card is kind of boring. So let's do this and add a new panel card. So I want to have two panel cards. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to add a panel card. Now I have two panel cards, and I'm going to go ahead and put some static text in here, and I'm going to say panel card 2. And up here, I'm going to change this static text to say panel card number 1, so we can see where the content is there. Now you'll notice something. I've added two panel cards, but guess what? Dun, dun, dun. We have a problem. And so if I click on there, and this is your handy dandy, if you ever screw up your layout for any other reason at all, you will see it's going to give you a little erroring. And then the layouter is going to tell you, well, wait a minute here. All of the panels must be contained in either a panel layout or a panel navigator. So I can't have multiple panel cards without something above it. So let's start out by going in here, and let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight all these items in here. And I'm going to go over here to my panel area, and I'm going to add a panel layout because I want both of these panel cards shown at the same time. So you'll notice that I've added a panel layout tag at the top and the bottom. It surrounds all of my panel cards. So now my error has gone away. If I go into my working preview, you'll notice, check it out. I've got my first panel card and my second panel card. And those are laid out side by side. And in fact, if I launch this in my browser, it is responsive in nature. And so go over here. You'll see that, check this out, it's still refreshing here. I caught it up there, but you'll see that it's responsive, meaning that it's saying, okay, I'm going to do 50% of the width here and 50% of the width here. And if I change this, you'll notice it automatically moves everything for me. And so that's a very powerful concept because it allows you to create these very dynamic user interfaces that are going to work well on a tablet, on a desktop web, because we're going to handle a lot of that complexity for you. Now, another thing I want to draw attention to is notice that, and I'll go back here to design and just go right here and show these side by side, that in my first panel card, I added a panel header and a panel footer. The second one, I didn't have that. Now, if I go back here, you'll see that the first panel card still has that context within it. So basically, it's a nesting concept, is I'm nesting these items within them, and each of these sub items can have their own formatting, their own structure, and the other pieces there. So I'm going to do this just to make it kind of simple. I'm going to get rid of this header and footer here. So I'm going to get out of here. I'm just going to go ahead and in panel card 1, I'm going to delete the panel header and the panel footer. I did it right, so I don't have any errors. So if I go to my working preview, I've just got a content area here. So now what I want to do, though, is on my panel layout, I'm going to go ahead and add a header, not to each panel card or either ones. I want it to be above both of my panel cards. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to add a panel header. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and add a little piece of static text. So I can put in there, that's the header. And now when I do it, you'll now notice that I have a header in my panel layout. Then I have my two panel cards left and right here that are in there. And again, I can put any kind of contact in these. I can put list controls, I can put embedded grids, I could put other UX forms. It's just going to hold that content there. So if you'll notice, I'm starting to get kind of close to, or starting to look like a what would be considered a modern user interface. Is usually you have a header area, maybe a footer area. You'll have a menu, which we'll show in a few minutes, and then you have that content area there. But let's show you some other cool tricks. First, it's like, hey, you know, this panel card 1 and panel card 2. they're like taking up the whole screen, where all I really want is panel card number 1 to kind of be left aligned. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to click on my first panel card. And over here, you'll notice that I have a layout side on the right-hand side, layout size. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to use a percentage. And I'm going to say, I want panel card number 1 to take 20% of the width of whatever it's inside of. So both of these cards are inside a panel layout. Panel layout is going to be 100% by default, the width of the screen. So I want this panel card number 1 to be 20% of the width. So I go in here, and now you'll notice that it's now 20%, and that panel card 2 automatically sizes itself to consume the rest of the space. And in fact, that's a little large. So I'm going to go back to panel card number 1 and do 15%. There you go. Go into working preview, and yeah, now it's getting a little tighter, and you're going to play with that and pieces there. So we're getting closer, but let's do a couple other things real quick. First and foremost, what I'd like to show is that in this header area here, instead of a panel card, instead of just this text, I'd like to have a control bar. So I'm going to go into this header area. I'm going to go ahead and add a control bar. So I'm going to that panel header section, and instead of just putting my own controls in there, I want to put one control, which is my panel or my control bar. So I'm going to go to the data controls, and I think it's in, is it in here or other controls? Let's see, might be in other controls. Yeah, control bars and other controls. So I'm highlighting the opening tag for panel header number 1. I'm going to control bar right here, and now I have a control bar in there. Now, since I added this manually, this control bar has nothing involved with it. So you'll see there's no data, no items, no layouts, everything is blank. But the nice thing about it with the control bar is that we have sample control bars you can load in there. So you'll notice down here in the lower left corner, we have a link that says load sample control bar. And if I go in there, you'll see we have all these different kind of control bars that are available. Ooh, I like this one. I think that one's cool. So I'm going to select that one, and that's what I want to do. And it's in the header, so it's in the header, and I'll go okay. So notice what it did is all it did is it brought in a set of definitions, like what are my items, what are my actions, and my layouts all set up and ready to go. Now, what's kind of interesting about that is that you can play around by loading other sample control bars just to play with it there. But what's really neat too is that you can save, once you have one that you really like, you can save that as your own template. So the next time you do another project, you go, hey, I really liked my control bar on item 1 through 3. I can save these control bars as templates, and then it will allow me to use that on other projects, because I can just say, create a toolbar, use my own template, I'm done kind of scenario. Okay, so what we've done here is that we've basically taken that panel header area, and instead of having individual controls, we now have a control bar, and let's take a look at it. Hey, kind of interesting, looking a little more interesting. So you'll notice a couple things. First, a control bar is going to take the whole top. And I've got a menu with some buttons here and a menu with some buttons here. So you start thinking about this, hey, this is kind of like with almost any modern browser application, you have your profile menu or your kind of commands over here for like profile, log out, set preferences, things like that. And in fact, let's go ahead and look this in Chrome real quick. You'll see that this is fully responsive. So there we go. So now I have that, and I can shrink it down. You'll notice a couple things when I shrink down. You'll notice two things. One is the control bar's width is changing to a line, and notice it's doing it on the fly, which is really nice. But also notice my panel cards. Notice how panel card number 1 is growing in there, because I said this is 15% of the width of whatever the window is there. And there's some tricks, and I won't go through them today, is that when you get to a certain level of size, you can actually make this panel card dock, which means that it kind of hides itself in case you don't have enough screen real estate. There's some really powerful techniques that are available for there. But the thing I wanted to show you is now I have what would be more of a dashboard web kind of situation. So I can start now just saying, hey, great. When I launch here, I can go ahead and say, open a UX in this panel card number 2, or many other type things that are available within here. But this is starting to feel it. And in fact, if I go, oh, my app, let's go ahead and change that. I go into my control bar, go to my items, and instead of my app, I want to put my very cool dashboard. And that's HTML, and you can put in there many different types. You can have it dynamic text and other pieces like that. So now when I need to adjust this top area, it's, oh, there's my very cool dashboard. Oh, I need to add a new button. So I go back into my control bar. Let's say I add a new item. I'll call it button 7, and that's a button. And I'm going to go ahead and go to, and you'll notice when I do that, it created an onClick event with some little thing. Hello, button 7. And now I can go to my control layout, go into my control layout. And again, this is not a full presentation on the control bar. Actually, we did a whole series on them about 6 or 8 months. That's great. Plus the documentation is phenomenal on this. So I'm going to go in here, and actually I think it's my menu one right here. I'm going to add it to menu 2. I go in here, and then I'm going to take, and I'm going to go ahead and copy, and I'm going to go and set that in here. There's a couple different ways to do it, but I'm going to make it very simple. So now you'll see I have my button 7 there. I click OK, and off to the races. Now I have button 7, and oh, there it's running my action JavaScript. So as you can see, the control bar is really powerful because when I'm working on this, notice how it's just one control. And in there is how I manage it. So it actually makes it easier. I don't have like 20 controls on here and sub panels and hit containers and all this other stuff here. It's all managed within this one thing there. Now, that's cool, but let's also add a menu to the left-hand side. So kind of mimicking the tabbed UI. So I'm going to go ahead and go to panel card number 1. I'm going to take panel card and I'm going to delete the content in there. So it's empty. Then I'm going to go over here to the data controls, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to put in a expanding menu. So what I want is an expanding menu because I might have like 100 menu items and I want to use like an accordion concept to show those menus. So I'm going to click expanding menus, click OK. Okay. So I'll call this cool master menu. I'm going to click OK. Okay. So I'll go into my cool master menu. And you'll notice there are 2 ways to load this menu. One is Genie, the other is JSON. Now, the cool thing about JSON is, let's take this example. I am building a system, and if I'm a manager, I want certain menu items. So what I could do is when I log in, we could define this JSON when you log in, and then tell the menu to use that JSON when for that, so that they get that menu. And then you could have another menu that's JSON. So it really makes it easy to manage these complex menus. So all you have to do is have some JSON. You don't have to have a whole bunch of HTML and CSS and other things here. But I'm going to go ahead and use the Genie. And I'm going to go ahead and set this up because it's kind of a manually. So I'll go set this up, and I'll go item 1, item 2, item 3. And under here, I'll go sub item 3-1, sub item 3-2, and sub item 3-3. Okay. So you'll notice that, and I think I need to, oh, it didn't like that. I guess, oh, you know what? I guess my nomenclature was off. So I'll just get rid of those, and I'll just go here and I'll add an item child, and I'll go sub item 3-1. And then I can go here and also add a child one there that's going to be sub item 3-2. Okay. Now notice when I'm on here, for each of these items, we have an onClick event. And we can also set an icon. So let me go ahead and set an icon on this one here. And as always, I like to use SVG icons. So I'll just go ahead and select that icon. That's pretty cool looking. And then for item 2, let's go ahead and select a different icon. And by the way, all this can be defined in your JSON. So in the future, you don't actually have to manually do all these things. You can set it up so it's inside the JSON and they refer in there. Now, the other thing the item has is an onClick event. So I can go in here and I can immediately put in like a JavaScript like that. But if I want to use action JavaScript, I want to do something a little bit interesting, I can actually access and create an action JavaScript right here. And so everything you do with action JavaScript is available through here. So you don't have to learn JavaScript. You can kind of go through those pieces here. So I'll go message box, and sample message box, and I'll click OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click OK. Now what I want to do is insert the code to run that action JavaScript. So it was a two-step process. I went into create edit JavaScript, created my action using the normal methodology. Then step number 2 was just to insert that code to run that object. And we just write the little piece of JavaScript to say run that. So you can kind of make it easy where you build it using the regular action JavaScript and you're able to do that. So I'll click OK here. So now I've got some action on there. So I'll click OK, and I'll click OK, and let's save this and check it out. Okay, so notice a couple things here. First, I've got my menu here with the icons and everything else, but you'll notice it has this area to the left because it's treating this as a control on the interface. So what I'm going to do this is I'm going to go here. I'm going to say first, fill container. So now what that's going to do is it's going to take this menu and it's going to fill whatever panel card number 1 is. Now, the trick with that is I can't add any other controls in here, but that's all I want is that menu in there. So now when I go to my working preview, you'll notice that I have my control right here going from there. So it's filled it. Now it's filled it horizontally because I only have that so many, and there's some tricks to do the coloring to make it look right. I'd probably do a matching background color so it all looks consistent on there. But notice this, accordion. So I don't have to handle or write any code on that. So let's go ahead and look at this in the browser and see what we're doing. So I hope you're seeing we're starting to build a full-blown menu-driven kind of Web 2.0 user interface using these simple techniques. So we have our header area here with our menu here. By the way, you can take this menu and insert it here, little trick. Then I also have my menu items here, and you notice it's all nice there, but I'm going to click on item number 1. Here's my message. So that's that action JavaScript I added there. But this could say like load an item here, or, that's kind of where you do is in panel cards, you can say in action JavaScript, load a UX or grid into this area here. And it'll allow you to do that from that standpoint. But you notice I'm starting to do it. Now, obviously my color scheme's way off, and you'd want to tie together the CSS color scheme for both your menus so they look nicely, but that's all CSS. In fact, I can go back in here, go into my menu here, and you'll notice here the menu color is set here. So let's go ahead and go back here. Let's go into our control bar. And let's say, what is our menu? I forget where I set it. Where's my colors? I think it's in the CSS over here. Yeah, here's my control bar background. So I'm going to copy this. So that's that color. Now I'm going to go back in my menu here, and I'll go into here, and I'm going to paste that here. And I may have other things I have to do, but now we got our menu. Pretty cool, huh? Starting to tie it together. And now we can kind of do some things to tie it so there's not these lines and other things like that. We can adjust those as possible. But I want to show you a couple of little quick tricks on this, on what you can do from here. So first, as I mentioned before, I could create an action JavaScript to load something in panel card number 2. So let's go ahead and show that. Okay. So now I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go into my menu, and I'm going to go to my menu data genie. I'm going to go to that item number 1. And right now my click it does test, but I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And what I like to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to say load grid is going to be called there. And then I'm going to go in and define my action JavaScript to open a grid component right here. Okay, so I'm going to select my grid that I've already pre-built. Let's see, there's a good one. We'll try that one. Okay, I can set other things, passive parameters, etc. Now the target here, what I want is I don't want to do it to window. I want it to do a panel, and the panel I'd like to do is panel card number 2. Remember, panel card number 1 is my menu, and I would obviously want to name those appropriately. So let's click OK. So now I've created my action JavaScript. Now I need to go in here and say, okay, let's insert the code to run that load grid. Boom. Okay, now my menu is ready to go. Now let's go in here, click item number 1, and notice, check it out. Here's my grid. And notice my grid works perfect. And I'd work on, making sure the CSS styling for everything is the same. But now I could have each of these menu opening different things in here, so I can have sort of a single page responsive. Now, grids aren't naturally responsive, so I might want to open up a UX with a list control, yada, yada, yada. That gets into a little bit more formatting area there. But let's make this really cool. Okay, so you'll notice in our interface right here, we have our top area, our left area, and then I have my panel card too. So what I want to do now is what I'd like to be able to do is really start leveraging my content area. So I'm going to go in here and I could add a panel card 3. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new panel card. And I'm going to just add one of them. And I'm going to call that panel card number 3. I'm just going to leave it. And I'm going to put some static text in there. Okay. Okay, so now you'll notice now I have 3 panels, my left panel, my middle panel, and my right one. So if you wanted to have like a 3-pane menu, now you'll notice the left one's still 50%, but it split these two between. But you know, I don't want this hello showing. I mean, I basically only want to look at that content area. So now what I'd like to do is I'm going to take these 2 panel cards here, and I'm going to go over here to my containers, our panels, and I'm going to add a panel navigator. Okay. So I took my 2 panel cards and I'm showing a panel navigator. And you'll notice the first panel card is panel card number 2. So now let's look at our user interface. Okay, we go back to where we have our menu here. We have our panel card here, but check this out. I'm going to click and drag on this center area. Essentially think of a wipe gesture. So see, oh, wow, check that out. Hello. And there's panel card number 2. Pretty cool, huh? So now what I can do is I want to go back so I can click item number 1 and notice, oh, there's my grid. And now I still have my content over here. Now let's go back into our menu because I really want to make this very cool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my menu genie and I'm going to go to item number 2 and I'm going to add another, let's call this load UX. So I'm going to add another menu item there. I'm going to use Action JavaScript because I don't want to spend my time doing all this. So I'll go here, we'll select a UX. I wonder what's a good one here. Let's try that one. I don't know. It probably won't come out looking nice, but whatever. And then I'm going to say panel and panel card number 3. Notice one of the options here is dynamic panel. You can create panels on the fly, which is really cool. So you don't actually have to preset all your panels. You can be creating them on the fly. It's pretty neat stuff. Okay. So now I've got my load UX. I want to insert that code. Okay. Now I can go working preview. So now I've got item number 1. It loads it here. Notice that hello is empty. Now watch when I click item number 2. Nothing happened, but behind the scenes, it went ahead and loaded that UX for me. Now the issue is, well, I want to show the user that information. So now I can go into design. I can go back to my master menu, go to my menu, go here to item number 2. And what I'm going to do is actually edit this for load UX. And I want to add a new action, which is a panel action. Set the active panel to be panel card number 3. And what that will do is now when I run this, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to load that grid, that UX, and show it to the user at one time. And I can go back and do that for there. So I can have my item number 1. Notice my UX is not showing there yet. I go item number 2 and, oh, I thought it would just set the active panel there. Did I hit the wrong thing? Let me go back and look at that real quick. I almost got out without a blow up. Go in here. Almost, man, so close. Did I set the active panel to be panel card number 3? That should be right. Huh. That's so close. Set active panel. Oh, well, it should work because what it does is it sends a command to here that in Panel Navigator 1, it makes that to be the active command. So we'll have to check on that. We'll get back to you on that. Yeah, it's loading the UX, but it's not showing that. So we'll have to find out what's causing that issue and we'll get back to you there. But the idea is now I can create programmatic ways to show the information to the different people here. So that allow you to kind of show and control it. So you can either control it by allowing the user to do a swipe gesture, or you can use it programmatically by just setting the active panels that will set the active panels for those there. And one thing that's kind of cool about this interface, especially if you're thinking like a tablet, you could have a series of charts, and then when you swipe, you're swiping, and you can do carousel where you're swiping through those series of charts to make like a chart dashboard. It's a little different when you're working with a mouse. You'll probably want to have a set of buttons maybe up here in this area here. So like, for instance, I can go to this panel navigator right here, put in a panel header. I could use a control bar, but I'm just going to put in 2 buttons real quick. And I'll just go ahead and get rid of those. Go here. We'll go into the action JavaScript here. And we'll set the active panel to be panel card number 2 inside that navigator. And this button right here is going to be set panel. Do right, panel. Set active panel to be panel card number 3. Save that. Now, not only can I use a manual method, but watch when I click these buttons, it's showing me my different contents. So I can go here and here. So you can use different methods to kind of determine how the person sees it. Now you'll notice I'm clicking the buttons, but I can also do a swipe gesture. Well, that's because when I go to this panel navigator, you'll notice that the panel navigator type is called carousel, and it's left to right. So it allows you to then, so carousel means it's like a swipe gesture. It's going to be like a carousel. When you swipe it, it brings the thing to next to it in there. But I can go programmatic, and now when I'm in programmatic, you'll notice I'm going to try and click and drag and nothing happens, but I can still use the programmatic method. Now you also notice that I'm going left to right. Well, I can go in here, and instead of left to right, I can say top to bottom. And now watch what happens. You'll see when I click button, does it not? Oh yeah, there it is. Yep, you'll notice that, and actually let's do this. So you'll see that I'm kind of using almost like a slide up, slide down, and these are literally 2 different UXs that are showing, although it kind of looks a little bit like a contiguous kind of situation there, but it's just taking care of like showing those different panels how I want them. And I could use swipe up and down. Now, one of the cool things about that is beyond creating some very cool visual effects and making it very easy for the people to interact with your tool, is that you'll notice that I can just dynamically go in and change these other things. And the next time it gets called and pulled into this panel card, I don't have to do anything. It's already there. I mean, basically you can dissect your application into subcomponents and then have those subcomponents there. Now I want to show you one other really cool thing. So here I'm in Panel Navigator. I'm going to go ahead and try this. So I'm going to go ahead and put in another panel card. Okay. And I'm going to put in some couple buttons in there. Okay, so I've got panel card number 4. Now, if I go ahead and show you this, what's going to happen is that you'll see that it's hidden because it's a panel navigator. But what I'm going to do is go to panel card number 4. I think I have to do it on a panel layout. I'm sorry, I have to move it up. I'll put it right here. Okay, so I'm sorry, kind of a little confusing here, but you'll notice that now I've got 3 panel cards. I've got my first left panel card. I've got the center one, which has, and notice, check this out, it still behaves the way we did. And I have this right panel card, but this right panel card, I don't technically want to be shown all the time. So what I'm going to do is go to panel card number 4, and I'm going to say that it is dockable. And I'm going to do collapse after. Okay, and then the minimum size is, let's say it's 10%. Okay, now I've set this panel card inside of this panel layout to be dockable. And watch what happens. First, you're going to notice, wait, where'd it go? It's nowhere to be seen. But I've got these pieces here. So what I'd like to do is it's actually here, but it's docked, meaning it's hidden over here to the side. So I'm going to go into this sub item 3-1, and I want to show that panel card. Or yet I could go, yeah, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into my master menu. Let me go to my Meet Genie. I'll go right here. I'll go into my onClick event, and I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go dialog.object.panel set active and panel object 4. So I could do action JavaScript like I've did, but I tend to know a little bit of JavaScript, so I do that here. So now if this works correctly, watch what happens. Okay, so it's still hidden over here on the right, but I'm going to click here. Check out what happened. It moved out here. So let me go ahead and adjust that so it's a little bit more visible. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this 20%. And there we go. Okay. So I'll go into working preview now, and I can click here and watch what happens on the right-hand side of the screen. It flies out. Now, right now it's staying out, but then I could add a button on here where clicking that button that says hide myself. So what this allows you to do is create these cool little fly out. You can either do it through the control bar or through this methodology using what's called a docked panel card. And I can say, you know what? I want to collapse it. Let's see, before. So you can tell it, well, okay, if I want to, I can click this item here, and you'll notice it kind of flew out all the way here. So you can play with these different docking methodologies here. And let's go ahead and do portrait. Let's try that. Portrait collapse before. And now when I click this button, you'll notice, oh, it's doing kind of the same thing. You can play with it, but it tells which direction it comes from. And there, okay, so that's the idea of using a panel card that's docked within a panel layout, which allows you to kind of create these fly out items. And inside this panel card can be anything you want. I have buttons, but it could be another UX. It could be a whole other grid. It could be any number of things. And again, you can dynamically load those things and do other tricks. So it really allows you to make very flexible user interfaces. So real quick recap. To create a web dashboard, we use a combination of panel cards, navigators, and layouts to lay it out on the screen and show and hide things as we need. We use the control bar at the top to create that main menu at top and the menus on the left. All of those are built in, ready to go. And then you can mix and match to make these things look any way you want it. You can have as many panel cards as you want and allow you to create very flexible, very powerful dashboards that act like modern 2.0, where you have these drop-down menus here, and then you have other things coming and showing and nice menus popping out here. And again, we can get rid of these lines to make sure the lines don't show up, and we're able to go from there. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dave to see if I have any questions on that. But that's an introduction to desktop web dashboards using Alpha Anywhere.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Dion. Yeah, we do have a few questions here. One thing you had mentioned was dynamically loading these panel cards. Is it possible to actually dynamically create panel cards?
That is what's happening, is that if I go into my action JavaScript and go like this, you'll notice right now I'm going into a specific target, but I can say dynamic panel, and then I tell it where, like in this Panel Navigator, and I'll go cool title. And this was kind of the idea of you could create tabs and stuff like that, because you can create your panel cards different ways. So okay, so we'll do that. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this Panel Navigator real quick.
Okay.
And I'm going to make that carousel. So now we can go in here and watch this. Okay, so I'll click that, and it automatically. So was it item 1 or 2? Where did I put that command? Which button was it, on this one? No. Did I do it in the menu, or did I do it on? Sorry, not.
Where did that code go?
Where did I put it? Oh my God. I'm sorry, guys. So this little head gold thing.
That answers the other question, by the way, which was, hey, who's speaking? That doesn't sound like Dion. So
yeah, I know it's a little rough today. I think I put it in item 2 here, and let's see. Okay, let me change this real quick. Let me see if I can make this a little more intuitive. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to make this a tab buttons, and then we'll show you. It's a different type of Panel Navigator. And then I want to go left to right. And let's see if we can do this here. Okay, check this out. Notice I changed this to tab band. And basically, it simulates a, we have these 2 different panel cards right here. And notice that's doing the navigation. So you can create these tabbed user interfaces. But I'm going to go ahead and click this. Notice what happened. This is essentially mimicking what you do in a tabbed UI. Is that when I clicked item 1, it said, open this grid, but open it in a dynamic panel inside this Panel Navigator. And once I did that, it said, oh, okay, I'm going to create a new tab, and now I have it on there from there. So you can essentially recreate the tabbed UI using this methodology. And then each time you click on one of these things, you can do that. And so for instance, let's go back into my button. Which button? Oh yeah, go into my action JavaScript, load grid. And what I'm gonna do is say user can close the dynamic panel. So I'm gonna click OK, save it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and go in here, and I'm gonna go ahead and select this item, and it's gonna go ahead and open this up here, and I should be able to close it. I'm not sure why the X is not right there. Huh, I'll have to go find out why that's not happening. But you should be able to close that, and so you could like close these dynamic panels. So cool thing is you could recreate the tabbed UI, this methodology. It's very flexible because you can just use Action JavaScript to decide exactly what panel, where you want it on the fly, so you don't have to build a whole bunch of specific buttons and tabs and other things like that. You can use this methodology to do it. I think that will just reopen it in the same one. Yeah, it just reopens it in the same location there. So cool.
Excellent. We also have a few questions that don't have to do with building dashboards, but have to do with images. And so two different people, two different questions. So maybe this will become a whole session, but let me just sort of read out what the questions are. One person is interested in being able to zoom in on an image. They've got a UX control. They have a photo, which is actually stored on S3, although I don't know that that matters. And when it appears in the UX, they'd like to be able to, using some method, be able to zoom in on the photo. And then the other question is, does Alpha Anywhere, and this may not be client side, but is there a way to do it, to do image manipulation in the sense of being able to do resizing, cropping, and rotating of photos? Is that a capability?
Yeah, so on as far as the second side, I don't know of any built-in alpha controls on that. So you'd probably have to look at a third-party control that maybe, like a PhoneGap plugin that would allow you to do those kind of manipulations there.
That's on the client side, right?
Yeah.
But on the server side, I think there are some things in XBasic that are actually meant to handle that.
Oh yeah, you can have what's called image magic. So you can use image magic.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll see if we could dig up, I don't know if Sarah's here, if she could dig up documentation on that, if we have any, and if not, we will create some.
Yeah, and the image magic allows you to do any transformation. So it's basically just a graphics manipulation engine. So you can do cool things like make it round and skew it and shrink it and all those other pieces there. But I did want to go in here and I did want to show you one thing you might want to look at is where's the ink control? Is the ink control, where is it? Am I not seeing it here? There it is, ink control. So one thing about the ink control that's kind of cool is it's a very flexible control. I can create and add a background image. Does it have it in here? Or yeah, it has a background image, and then the image data you can put in here. It can either be a URL or basically, so that URL could be a URL of Amazon S3.
Mm-hmm.
Once I set that background data, the ink control, you could disable like the actual inking part of it, and you could use it as an image zoom in and zoom out, because the basic ink control allows you to resize the viewport of what you're looking at on an image. So you could kind of use the ink control as kind of a overkill viewer kind of item that's in there. But you'd want to go in and disable all the actual inking process.
Right, exactly.
And so that, and you can set this background image data programmatically to say, okay, when I open up this UX, I'm going to show that image inside this link control. So I thought that might be a quick and dirty way for you to kind of add a zoom functionality to your thing. And it does work with URLs, which means it's going to work nicely with our friends at Amazon S3, since everything's
excellent. Yeah, that's great. I've also noticed there are a bunch of JavaScript libraries out there which are dedicated to that too. So you could include those in your projects. People have written all kinds of magnifying programs, so that would be another thing to do.
And my guess is it's probably going to be a little more intuitive than the ink control, because the ink control was built to do not only zoom but also to overlay. So
it's meant to do annotation. Yeah.
But hey, you can give it a try.
Cool. here's a great question that we get. I haven't heard it in a while, but it's a good one. And it has to do with logging into a mobile application when you don't have connectivity.
Aha, that's a great one.
You know
Well,
what I mean? Like, what's your approach? On a server, it's no problem. It goes against a database, but do you keep the credentials on the phone? Do you have it? Do you have some sort of lease system where you logged in when you have connection, but and that lasts for a little while? Or what are approaches that you've seen or taken in the past along those lines?
well, first is use the built-in UX template that does this. It's called Security Framework Login Component Mobile App Persistent Login. And so we've
Oh,
already kind of built that. It's ready to go. Now, as far as how it works is that, yes, you need to have a connection to the server because how can you tell if that person is actually able to use it? So after they log in, built into this here is a set of scripts, and they're all built into here that will create what's called a JWT, a JSON Web Token,
uh-huh.
that is stored on the local device. So what happens is I log in using this. The system on the server creates a JWT, and you can control what the password is for that. You can also control like its life cycle. So you can say it expires after 2 days or 3 days or whatever it happens to be. Then what happens is this, is that when you go to back in to log in, it's going to look and say, oh, guess what? You have a JWT. Great. In you go. You're good to go. So I don't even have to be online. Basically, when I go to open the app's the first thing it's going to do, if I go to the client side on render complete, I'm going to go in here and there's some things that are going to say, hey, does this JavaScript or a JSON web token exist? If it does, go ahead and take the person right into their application and off to the races. Now, that said, there's a whole bunch of control around this that you can set. So there's a couple things. One, every time the person does an XBasic callback on the server, you can review their security and say, can they do this or not? So for instance, let's say like 2 days from now, you say, okay, Joe Schmo is not allowed to use this anymore. So what you can do is in the XBasic callback, we do a check to see if that user is still authorized to be able to use the system. But if they're not authorized through our security framework, then it will send a message back to the mobile platform saying, expire the JWT, log them off, and then they're done. And then they can't use the app. So they can still use it as they're offline. Excuse me. But every time they try to connect to the server and do something like refresh a list or update records or things like that, we're checking their security to make sure that they're still allowed to do what they want to do. And if they're not, we say, okay, no good. And then also in the JWT, after a while, it will expire and it will force you to re-log in at that point in time, and you can control all that timing. So there's a
Right.
lot of good control over it, but again, when you create a UX, go to the UX and use the template, mobile security framework login component mobile app persistent login. We have
System login.
many
Yeah.
customers that are using this because they don't want their user to have to log in every time they access the app, but they do want all the controls that are associated with it. And there's some really good documentation that Sarah and the team has put in explaining how this works and how you can adjust the scripting to say, change how long the JWT is available, other things like that. Works great.
Cool. Well, we have about 90 seconds left, so I'll ask you what might be a quick question. And this person is interested in sending out emails and SMSs from their UX directly. So I guess presumably maybe no access to the server. Maybe they have cell phone signal but not data or something like that. Are there any plugins or anything like that, PhoneGap, which allow SMS or allow us to send out emails? And have you worked with them before?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
You'll see that there are built-in SMS PhoneGap plugins, and you can actually open this, and it will allow you to send SMS messages. Now, along with that, you'll need, like something like Twilio or other account to actually send that out. But there are a number of PhoneGap ones, like for instance, SMS, Push Wishes, and One Signal are for in-app notifications. So there are built-in ones that are available. I think there's an email one. Yeah, email composer with attachments. So these are
Huh.
all things you can add to your mobile app, and they don't require the alpha server. they actually will connect to whatever the service is you're sending SMS and email through. But these, and the documentation is available for these on how to integrate them. You'll have to know a little JavaScript because you'll be setting some parameters, setting things up, but it's really not too difficult. And there's a lot of documentation on helping you out on that.
Well, that's fantastic. Dion, thank you very much. We've come to the end of the hour. I hope you feel better for next week.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone who joined us today, especially those folks who asked questions. And if you do have further questions, go ahead and send them to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. Thanks again for joining us. We hope to see you next Wednesday. Take care and goodbye.